Jolene, 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 Jolene. If you've seen the episode, and for the love of all that is holy, if you haven't seen the episode, stop watching this video now, because I don't want this to be spoiled on you, okay? Watch the episode first. So I'm proceeding from here with the full assumption that if you're watching this, you've watched the episode, right? You know what I want to talk about in this. You know what I want to talk about, but we're still going to go through the episode beat by beat as we always do. I have a whopper of a list of I've got some ups for this episode, so's I do. Let's begin at the beginning. We open on our favorites in the Cerritos sitting around in the mess hall, and our first up of the week, it's Beard Watch! Beard Watch. We've got a full beard this week. That's almost... We've been building to this all season, right? And the fact that at the 11th hour, or the 9th episode, they have inserted something that has taken away what was clearly going to be a latinum up. You know, a full beard, but no. Also, I do want to say as well that, yes, they did a good gag last week that I'll mention here now, is that Rutherford, who grew his, stubble for one episode, then had it disappear last week and it's still gone this week. Very, very Geordie LaForge for that 5 minutes when he was trying to grow a beard as well. Actually, I say trying to grow a beard, he grew a gorgeous beard. This is obviously before the movies, in The Next Generation. But yes, our Beard Watch, is it complete? I mean, he doesn't shave in the course of the episodes. It's not to say that we don't see a different kind of facial hair upon Brad Boimler's face. As Rutherford tinkers with his ocular implant, he almost skewers Boimler with a bolt of plasma, which leads to, at least from Tylin's point of view, the revelation that, well, we're down to our last Boimler, there's no duplications left. She asks, am I to understand from this that you have been duplicated before? And of course we get the reference to William Boimler, the transporter clone that was created and served aboard the USS Titan. From their point of view, they believe William Boimler is dead. Tendi actually has a little bit of a laugh about it. She does apologise though very quickly, so I'll leave her off with that. And she then reminds people that, people come back from the dead all the time, and we cut to Shax, which is an absolute up from me this week. And then, Shax is sitting there just grumbling and shouting at his potatoes, and as an Irishman, I really felt that. So I'm giving that an up as well. This is all preamble, as we are going to zoom out of the Cerritos. We're zooming through a few fissures, and we zoom up upon a Defiant class vessel, which we will find out that is called the Anaximander, captained by William Boimler. Beard Watch. Now, Boimler's looking pretty nice there with his sort of stubble. His obviously came in a little bit, fuller, I suppose, if you like. Oh, maybe it didn't. Okay, indulge me for a second. Those of us out there who've attempted to grow beards and have varying levels of success with it, yeah, it all came in one go from the beginning, right? It definitely didn't come in patches. Now, after that, you can take it down to the stubble, and it might look a bit like this again, but that's not to say that William Boimler's beard came in differently from Brad Boimler's beard. Is this a pointless tangent? Possibly. Am I buying time because my excitement levels are off the chart? Jolene Blaylock returns as T'Pol. Folks, I don't think that this is going to be any shock. Our dilithium up of the season is the return of Jolene Blaylock. I never thought this would happen. I will be totally straight with you, because there was bad blood after the end of Star Trek Enterprise. That show was cancelled. She then very quickly after that stopped coming to conventions, stopped doing appearances for quite a long time. Star Trek Day a couple of years ago, she did make an appearance on the red carpet and was a part of the festivities, which we now know, I can only assume these two things are related. I'm not 100% on the timelines, but for her to make an appearance after that much of a gap. Now, I am going to gush about this for a long time because true story. About a week and a half ago, I was flicking through Star Trek as I tend to do, and I just started going, look, I want to watch a few episodes of Enterprise. It had been a bit of a while, and I was reminded again just how good Jolene was as T'Pol, and what a crime it was. Not only that Enterprise came to an end the way that it did, and especially that, look, we've spoken about these other voyages many times, it became apparent that she had a bad time. The details are not massively, out there, and but she gave an interview in the times past when she discussed, as the show moved into its third and fourth seasons and her neckline got lower because this was the producer's attempt to bolster ratings for the show. Her own words is that you can't substitute tits and ass for storyline. Now, time I think has been kind to Enterprise, but like the Xindi arc, it's a fantastic season of television. Things were handled better than others, and then going into season 4 we had so many standout moments. But then it seemed like that might be it. She did do the cast reunion that I believe is available on the season 2 box set of Enterprise, the Blu-ray, so that is out there and available, but then that was it for the longest time. She then, after a few more appearances in film and in television, she kind of stepped away from acting. She is a very successful activist herself and her husband. They have charity organizations set up. Nothing I've said is in any way to suggest that she hasn't been busy for the last few years. All of this to say that we have been, look at any of our Hope videos for Strange New Worlds. We're like, we'd love to see T'Pol back. We'd love to see Jolene come back. We didn't maybe think it was going to happen, but, assuming that Strange New Worlds might be the place that it did. So my socks were blown off and remain blown away because, wow. I mean, we're 5 minutes into the episode and I'm still talking. For me, as a Trekkie, first and foremost, seeing Jolene returning to the role of T'Pol after about 20 years away is one of the most heartwarming, exciting, cool things that I didn't think I was going to get to see. And yeah, if you don't think that we have just been, like, the TrekCulture text chat has been like exploding about this because, Also, a quick reminder, a dilithium, because you will have seen a -1 appearing in the downs side. A dilithium up has the power to take away a down. So we were at 0 downs, that's why that's at -1. I have so many more ups to dish out throughout this whole episode. The guest cast, obviously, an up, but Jolene was the biggest surprise. She was by no means the only surprise. In fact, how did Gabrielle Ruiz describe the guest list for this season?
The guest star list is sick, okay? Ugh, the people that are coming in that said yes to do it. Like, I'm just like squealing for everybody to find out.
Well, I mean, if that's how T'Lyn describes it, that's how I'm describing it. So, Alexander Siddig returns as Julian Bashir. Andrew Robinson returns as Garak. Again, now, I'm assuming you have seen the episode, because what are you doing watching this if you haven't? Alfre Woodard returns as Lily Sloan, reprising the role from Star Trek First Contact, and Garrett Wang returns as Harry Kim. Just on that, we wondered, Why reveal that Harry Kim was going to be back in the trailer? Well, because in classic Lower Decks 4, I mean, Mike McMahon must have been just wetting himself laughing when the whole world was reacting and going like, oh my god, what a big shock and a big surprise, which it is that Garrett Wang returns, but bloody everyone returns. So it's going to sound funny me saying this, but the guest list, Latin them up. I'm overflowing with excitement. My Latinum up of the week is the guest cast of this week. Jolene was my dilithium, and I regret nothing. We've basically got to the opening credits at this stage, and how many minutes are we into the ups and downs? Okay, sorry folks, I should probably discuss the episode itself. So, William Boimler is commanding the USS Anaximander, working for an organization he couldn't possibly name. Do you reckon it's a section of some kind? And he has his assembled crew. He has T'Pol, he has Curzon Dax up, he has Dr. Elam Garak, and the emergency medical hologram, Julian Bashir. I mean, this is cool. This is just... Now, the rest of the ship is crewed by the random Harry Kims that they found throughout their travels, because the mission of the Anaximander is to track down the causes of these quantum fissures that we've been following throughout the season. Did anyone else assume that it wouldn't be the Cerritos that was actually the one tracking these down? I think I just assumed in the nature of Lower Decks itself. But this, to me, works really, really well. Why must we assume that the prime reality is always the one where the majority of the action will take place? So a nice, fun way of addressing this issue. Now, while I'm having fun with it, and while we may be having fun with it, one person isn't having fun with it. And that's William Boimler. And he is so over multiverses. Up. William Boimler's jaded approach to his job, while still being a good captain, is actually quite funny to see, because it's Boimler. You know, we're so used to Jack Quaid performing Brad Boimler as the over-the-top, rosy-cheeked, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed version of the character. And to have him, you know, voice this version of the character, one who is so done with this task, one who is so ready to go back to exploring strange new worlds, it's quite an interesting change to see. Now, there's physical changes, of course, the aforementioned beard, and also this one is in a First Contact era style uniform as opposed to our Cerritos type uniform. He needs something of a surprise. He needs something that is more interesting than just effectively plugging holes, which is what the Anaximander is doing. They are closing different fissures. At this point in the episode, they don't know sort of how incomplete their task is. Oh my Jesus Christ. Oh, sorry, no, I thought I said everything's fine. Sort of flipping, something fell in the next room. Sorry, Chris. Whew. Lazy derivative remixes. Now, taken up there, because this is, I feel, a comment not just on the plot of this episode, but of the treatment of multiversal stories in Hollywood and in media overall. The reliance on the same but different. And as fun as that can be, which we will come to in a bit of detail now in a while, it can get a bit one note. And overall, looking at the plot of this episode, I feel that this episode itself is a bit of a comment on how multiverse has been treated in media, how it's been treated in Star Trek. You know, now, with Star Trek, it's more so been a case of alternate universes, although, to be fair, that's pretty much what this is. You've got Kelvin, you've got Prime, you've got Terran, and you've got whatever the flip was going on in Worf's episode Parallels. I ain't gonna try and count them. There's a lot. It's all variations on a theme. So you have William Boimler, whose task is now only chasing down these quantum reality fissures. He's bored. And he's like, I must have something else to do with my career. I want to explore strange new worlds again. And he gets quite worked up about it, because when they rescue, as it happens, the latest Harry Kim from an escape pod, then we're introduced to the fact that the rest of the crew is pretty much Harry Kims as well. And Boimler's like, of course it's Harry Kim. They're always Harry Kims. There's just nothing new ever going to happen. Because it's always going to be something like, and I know this is kind of for the cetacean observations as well, but it says, oh, it's like a reverse Picard or a Borgified Kirk or, I don't know, a human Worf. It's just remixes. And I see his point. It is part of the funny side of the story as well, but yeah, he's got a point here. And he sort of storms off the bridge, and it's up to Paul and Curzon to explain to this new Harry Kim what the issue is. They're explaining the fact that there are many, many, many dimensions. This episode, in fairness, you could have called this episode Murphy's Law. Anything that can happen does happen. T'Pol is explaining this to Harry, and I'm just having all sorts of exciting feelings because T'Pol is speaking, let alone anything else. Harry sums it up quite nicely. When all you are doing is the same task over and over, meeting the same faces over again, it must feel like you're treading water. And we get this cute little scene where T'Pol says, I find that simile quite astute. And Harry goes, oh, thanks. It was just a nice exchange. Curzon takes this new Harry through the ship, and that's where we actually get our first shot of Garak and Bashir holding hands. So first of all, the throwaway line, in some dimensions, I'm a tailor. Up. Fantastic. All right, yeah, listen, I'm going to go into the whole Garashir thing. So pretty much since day dot in Deep Space Nine, from Andrew Robinson's first appearance as Garak in past prologue, he, and these are his words, played Garak as Garak just wanted to have sex with Dr. Bashir. That was it. That was what he wanted. He was hungry for more than just lunch that day. And he was told, look, tone it down. That's not what we're sure we want to do with the character. We don't want to do that. And it all became subtext as DS9 went on. So even though they did have this fantastic relationship that for most of the seasons you can see it there. As we get a bit further on, it takes a little bit of a back seat. But here, they just play with it. And what I like as well is that this is a variation on a theme of what we saw in the Alone Together, the play reading that Alexander Siddig and Andrew Robinson did during lockdown. It's all available on YouTube, and if it's 4 episodes. If you haven't watched it, go and watch it. It's fabulous. It's like a table read, but just first, you hear their voices here, which is amazing, but then hearing their voices there, and in that story, they touched on some changes in the characters, or say, developments, I should say, free of any kind of restrictions from the producers and such. And Robinson was able to, allow Garak's flag to fly. And in fact, in that version of the story, Garak and Dukat had a bit of a tryst when they were younger. And Bashir discusses that, sadly, in that story, Ezri Dax has had to pass the symbiont on, is all I will say, but to a new male host named Ken. And Bashir talks about how they tried to continue their relationship together, at least suggesting he was not entirely heterosexual. And again, this switch from subtext closer to text. Here, this text is in bold, it's highlighted, it's lifted up over the roof and everything, and that's part of the fun of it. And I really, really enjoyed it. Look, there's going to be people that will not like this, and okay, I'm not going to sit here and say, and wag my finger at you, nothing of the sort. If you didn't like this, absolutely fine. It is a capitalization on a lot of both on-screen and additional materials of their relationship as years have gone on. So, for example, myself, wacky Sean, who follows these stories and reads these things, I thought this was just funny as anything. And I thought, yeah, what a perfect couple together. And also just the fact, and the fact that it's explicit as well, that they're like, there's no like, oh, well, the way they looked at each other, like, no, they kiss. They full on kiss in this episode. In fact, there's one scene which I'll come to in a bit where I'm just like, you really highlighted it in that moment. It does, however, leave the door open for actually quite a sad line. And that's where Curzon is talking about how Garak and Bashir like to, brag that statistically they shouldn't have found each other. They're from different universes, these two characters. Curzon goes, "Love never falls out of the rifts for Curzon." Up, but only because I want to give you a hug. This leads directly into the scene that we saw in the trailer, which is Curzon delivers Harry to the Room of Harrys, which is just full of gags and, Garrett Wang chatting to himself. And we get that just brilliant joke about how you're all still ensigns. We're gonna have fun in Cetacean Observations, don't you worry about that one. Back up on the bridge, we get warning that something's coming through the next fissure, and it turns out to be a Starfleet shuttlecraft, one that's about to go critical and explode. Thankfully, they managed to beam the occupant aboard, and it's a version of Mariner. Up. Boims, I think that's T'Pol. Because even the characters realize how important it is that T'Pol is here. I really like this version of Mariner. Jack Quaid and Tawny Newsome really get to play same but different in this episode. And they get a little bit of range. We have obviously William Boimler and everything that goes along with that. But this version of Mariner, first of all, she's an engineer, she's still an ensign, and she's very different while still being very recognizable. She doesn't have that sort of devil-may-care attitude. As we find out later on, she's never spent a day in prison, and she just likes doing her job as an engineer, while at the core, her personality is still the same. I'm just here for it. I like it. And I like as well that we don't play with, oh, this is an evil one, or this is, much as I love Vindicta, don't get me wrong, oh, this is just Vindicta or something like that. No, it's a true multiversal version. We get then a bit of a conversation in the mess hall. So you have Boimler and Mariner, you have the group of Harrys, and you have T'Pol and Curzon. Boimler and Mariner basically give us a little bit of our backstory. Boimler sort of laments that he's not warping through the stars. Mariner gives him information which becomes incredibly important very, very quickly, but I'll come to that. That this new Harry Kim, this two-pipped Lieutenant Harry Kim, is there fielding questions from the other Harrys and also kind of going, well, did none of you ever try for promotion? And there's a brilliant line that I said, look, with Borg incursions and aliens trying to steal our organs, it just didn't seem that important. And I never looked at it that way before, because the gag has always been he was never promoted. But I really like that one. I also like that there was, when Lieutenant Kim goes, what did you do with your Tuvix? We do a hard cut to Curzon because we're just not going to take on that topic. Up. I love the fact that Lower Decks has explored Tuvixing, and Prodigy featured an off-screen version of the character as well. Never forget. But this hard cut to Curzon and T'Pol, which, by the way, we produced a lovely image of T'Pol there a while back. Missed opportunity. Mullet T'Pol. I quite like this friendship going on because T'Pol is full-blooded Vulcan. Well, depending on if they had done that 5th season of Enterprise or not, but no, as it stands, full-blooded Vulcan. And so, effectively as close to Spock as we've been in forever. Not including the versions of Spock, I mean, in terms of how she approaches friendships. Curzon is very much the opposite. Curzon is hot-headed, Curzon is as Klingon as a Trill can be, and he is Curzon Dax. That's an important thing to remember as well. So this version of Curzon, and we can only assume, has all of the Dax symbionts, including, or hosts of the symbionts, including Duran, we can only assume, up to this point. He just hasn't passed the symbiont on yet, because, well, rudely enough, he's still alive. There is a question of these different realities. Does time move at the same pace? T'Pol speaks about being married for 63 years to a human who is name-dropped. Yes, she married Trip, and we can only assume / hope that they had many lovely babies who lived. Holy God, that's a crushing ending to that episode of Enterprise, but however, Curzon would be... That should line up, more or less, timeline-wise. Let's see, if she was married for 63 years, let's allow 10 years for marriage. Yeah, this is still... Yeah, Curzon in his heyday. Okay, they could theoretically be from around the same year. The Anaximander won't be, Mariner won't be, Harry Kim won't be, so, and the other characters who I've mentioned who we'll talk about won't be. So there is a merging of different times here, which, if nothing gets fixed, makes me a little bit worried because remember Giorgio? Remember Yor? Both of whom had really unpleasant side effects from moving both universes and time. So, in the light fare that is Lower Decks, I'm gonna, spoiler, it doesn't get dealt with in this episode, but hopefully everyone gets home to where they need to be and no one goes through the horrible excruciating death that Yor asked to be euthanized from. Anyway, Yor has other things to do at the moment, so I'm going to hope that he had at least some fun in life. Gotta meet Kirk and everything. But their friendship is very, in a way, Spock-Kirk. The T'Pol and Curzon, the slightly more hot-headed and the very coldly logical, but there is a thawing between them. Also, love the fact that for no reason at all, everyone's eating noodles. Except for T'Pol, who's eating sushi. Didn't check to see if it was actually fish sushi, because technically, if all Vulcans are vegetarian... But listen, she might be a pescatarian. I don't know. I'm not going to police her diet. In that same room, Mariner drops the little bit of information that she's been able to track the Fissures, which sends Boimler into a tizzy because they've not been able to track the Fissures before. They've just been able to respond to them. So they all run up to the bridge and taken up for the Treknobabble. Love a bit of Treknobabble, me. You know, and there's can you tell I didn't write it down? Listen, there's Treknobabble, and it allows them to realize that for every fissure that is created and closed, there is another fissure somewhere in the galaxy because of the law of energy being a finite source, and this effectively creates balance. Now, this means that they can force a fissure to relocate to right in front of them if they just use the right tools, which, being a well-equipped Defiant class ships, they have. With a little bit of tinkering of the Hyperdyne 101 and, you know, the flux capacitor, they activate the fissure and through comes the Beagle. Up at long flipping last, a ring ship variant shows up on screen. Now, before you shout at me, yes, I know it's not the Enterprise ring ship. That's a slightly different design from this one. This is a little bit different. It has solar panels that one doesn't have. It has extra struts connecting the rings to the main hull that the Enterprise didn't have. But for all intents and purposes, they have canonized on screen, asterisk, Sean, but the ring ship Enterprise. That little asterisk being it has appeared previously in terms of images in the franchise, and also there was a model of it on Admiral Marcus's desk in Star Trek Into Darkness. But technically this is the first time you see one of these ships flying around, and although we don't see it for a few minutes, seeing how it lands is really cool, especially for anyone who's tried to put the bloody Eagle Moss one on the stand and prayed it didn't fall. Spoiler, it did. Curzon gets a bit trigger happy, so he fires at the ring ship, which, although it does damage it, doesn't damage it sufficiently for them to catch it in time to stop it going through another quantum fissure. This results in one of the Harry Kims being injured, so much so that he has to get to sickbay. There we see Garak and Bashir discussing where they might live, whether they will live in one reality or another, and it's all very peaceable. Lol, no it isn't. I said it was explicit. They're standing in rainbow light. Take it up. As the Anaximander comes through that fissure, Boimler is very unhappy with Curzon. Curzon says, "Don't glare at me, you know, I got them." And Boimler says, you know, "Well, we better have." And Mariner turns to T'Pol and says, "Wow, I mean, my Boimler is nowhere near that uptight." I mean, he's just, you know, a big Starfleet nerd. Mariner then mentions Archer to T'Pol. T'Pol thinks for a second and says, big Starfleet nerd would be an accurate description. Up for me little heart. They both go through together, Curzon fires again, and this time both ships get damaged sufficiently that they need to put down on a nearby planet. We get to see a Defiant class landed. That's pretty cool. You know, I haven't seen that before. We'd heard that it could land, but we hadn't actually seen it landed before. And they're only a few hundred meters away from where the ring ship is said to have put down. Brilliant, we're just gonna walk there, and we've got the Quappas. I heard you like mudkips. Well, the Quappas are nowhere near as friendly as they originally look, and they manage to take Curzon, Mariner, Boimler, T'Pol, and a whole boatload of Kim's prisoner, stick him in a cell. This is where we find that Mariner is uncomfortable being in cells, having never been in one before, which is kind of funny, so taken up, which causes her to back into another character. The crew of the ship they chased are in this prison as well, captained by Lily Sloan. So like obviously like, you know, I've given the Latinum up already for the guest cast, but this is another one. I just never thought to see her again. You know, maybe if we'd done a prequel or something like that, because Lily Sloan was in 2063. Enterprise starts nearly 100 years after that, you know, like, And no, Alfre Woodard returns to the role of Lily Sloan. She is the captain of the Beagle, which is a quantum reality ship. That's how they travel. They don't warp through space. They travel through different dimensions. And one of my favorite things, I mean, other than just the sheer amount of returning cast and oh my God, but one of my favorite revelations of this episode is that these fissures that have been created throughout the season, which we all assumed were going to be part of, you know, a big bad conspiracy. No, they were never villains. They just wanted to learn up. Before we go too deep into that, back aboard the Anaximander, of course, the Quappas have now taken over the ship and they're crawling through, but what they don't account for is Garak hiding in a panel in sickbay. He tosses a mobile emitter to Julian Bashir and assures him, I'm a surgeon, but I'm not just a surgeon. Just up. I love you, Garak. While the two crews discuss their situation in the jail cell, we discover this revelation that nobody is a villain, that's just how they travel through, and they didn't realize they were causing damage. In fact, initially, Lily is, from her position, understandably defensive. She's like, you shot us down, what are you doing? And Boimler's like, yeah, you're causing tears in space-time. She's like, oh, we didn't know that. Like, we've been closing them. He's like, but this is the point. He's like, no, you haven't closed all of them. That's the issue. And so, again, there's no, like, you do. Straight away, she's like, oh, okay, we should fix that then. Thank you, Star Trek. Thank you. So many issues in so many stories get sorted if people just talk to each other. And that's what I like about this so much. That doesn't mean I don't enjoy a little bit of fisticuffs, which makes it very, very funny then when Garak comes along, just Kirk foos the back of one of the Quappas and then says, I've never really been a fan of face-to-face combat. Oh, I know what you're doing there. You've taken up. You've taken up for that. This allows them all to escape, and one of the Kims is getting a bit disgruntled. First, he was a bit disgruntled that he was the only Kim to receive a promotion. Then, he was a bit disgruntled that all the Kims got bundled into their own cells, one separate from the commanders. And then, as they all begin to run out, Mariner says, Kim crew, let's hustle, you know, and he's like, you can tell he's not very happy with his lot in life. So they double team it anyway back to the Beagle, which it's called the Beagle. I just love it at this stage. And the ship is damaged, thanks Curzon. So they need to start repairs, which they do, and things are going well. Boimler and Sloan then have a bit of a conversation in the ship itself, where they talk about the merits of exploring via warp and exploring via quantum realities. And they both raise really good points. And this, I think, speaks to the larger question of whether or not exploring multiverse is worth doing or whether it's a tired trope. We've got to get on, we've got to see new things, explore strange new worlds. Whereas Lily Sloan says, yes, but by doing what we do, we don't need to meet other alien species. We get to see all the different things that humanity can do. You know, and she lists a couple of examples, which I will come to in the citation observations, but I really hear her logic here, which is why this whole conversation is an up from me. It's like the two camps of, well, what are you doing with the multiverse? It's because we can explore different ways to tell a story, which there is absolute merit to that. Just as this conversation is about to come to an end, someone's stealing the ring ship. And it transpires it's the Harry Kims, led by this lieutenant. And they're taking the ship and they're getting out of there. So, I mean, what can everyone else do? They have to start double teaming it back to the Anaximander. But they've now got to fight through a whole bunch of Quappas. And, well, Curzon wasn't carrying the Batleth just for the crack now, was he? Although several things will get cracked. At one point he says, don't worry, everyone's gonna get their ass kicked. Up. I will say Curzon's a little one note in this episode, but everything we've ever really heard Curzon described as, this works for me. It does. Even though the fact he's clearly Shax. Yeah, I mean, like, it's like, there but for the grace of a dimension. But, yeah, it works. They manage to take back control of the Anaximander. It takes off from the planet. Curzon appears on the bridge. He has one of those movie injuries. You know, the one where you've been shot or stabbed here, which you don't reveal until later in the plot? But sure, listen. I mean, as he walks in, you can see he's not well. They start to chase the ring ship, and, you know, this is where they speak to Harry over the view screen, and the other Harry say, he tricked us, we didn't want to do this, this was not us. And I like that as well. It's not all of the Harrys make this decision, it's just one of them. I have to give an absolute up to the interior of the ring ship. Is obviously very much based around the NX-01 interiors, and it just makes me feel happy to see that again. And considering I'm also going to give an up to the fact of the Defiant engineering. I mean, love the bridge alone, but the fact they did the engineering as well. I mean, yeah, just love it. Just love it. I love ships, you know this. This leads to our technically obligatory chase scene. You kind of knew this was coming. There had to be a countdown clock somewhere. So the crew of the Beagle, who is of course aboard the Anaximander, are chasing after their own ship, and you know they give Boimler the information needed to disable the ship, but the problem is it's so far away. We guess this is when Mariner runs off to engineering to increase the mass of engineering so that they can speed up the impulse engines, because they can't do warp. That was said earlier on in the episode, you know, warp through a fissure, boom, nobody wins. We get a scene that's very evocative of things like By Inferno's Light. Yeah, By Inferno's Light, with the Defiant going to warp inside the Bajoran solar system. It appears directly over the runabout and bang, bang, boom. But also there's just that little moment of like a second of warp. It's very Picard maneuver as well. I'm getting ahead of myself. This is all citation observations here. Anyway, they almost catch up with it. The Harrys have begun effectively a revolution on board the Beagle, and you know, they're like, we're not on board with Lieutenant Harry here. And Lieutenant Harry says, well, right, I was trying to bring you somewhere where you could all rank up, but obviously you don't want to, so see you later, and beams them all back to the Anaximander. So great that he saved them, but he has left himself fairly stranded on a ship that looks like it's about to fly apart at any moment. Fly her apart then! With everything else happening as well, Curzon does reveal his injury to the crew. T'Pol immediately says, I'm going to bring him down to sickbay, which she does, and Garak, as good as he is unable to save Curzon. But yeah, which leads to quite a sad scene, where T'Pol says, you know, I will bring your symbiont back to your reality for you. And Curzon makes a point of saying, it doesn't work without a host. So she does the next best thing. She mind melds with the Dax symbiont to take all of the Dax memories into herself, effectively, in a way, making her the next Dax. But also in a much more real way, not making her the next Dax, because she doesn't have the Dax symbiont. You know what I mean? And we're certainly left to believe that this is the death of Dax as much as it is Curzon. But of course I have theories. But she does do her job in time and manages to take all the memories in. Meanwhile, as Garak and Bashir are running around, they've been having just fun bickering throughout the episode. Well, at least Garak thought it was fun. I don't think Bashir thought it was very much fun. In fact, he says as much. I just love them. The upshot of everything is the Beagle is destroyed, but this is bad because it's destroyed within the fissure, which sets off a chain reaction. Now that is going to threaten to destroy all of reality, like all of the universes. Lily does know a way that she can channel that explosion into one universe. The cost being that it will destroy an entire universe. But, you know, she makes the argument, and I'm paraphrasing, the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few. It's all universes or one. It's a horrible decision to have to make. And then we get a fabulous scene, which is, rather than spending ages worrying about, oh, what we gotta do, Boimler goes, I'm gonna trust ourselves. You know, we're scan my quantum signature, send it to my reality, which is, of course, the prime reality, depending on who you ask. That means it could be sent to where our Cerritos is going to be. Our Cerritos, of course, containing Tendi, Rutherford, Brad Boimler, Mariner, and T'Lyn. He trusts that they will be able to find a way, as long as they don't panic. He piggybacked a message along with this signal as well. So Brad Boimler is able to read that message and immediately panic and go, "We're all gonna die!" To be continued. Up. Will you join me, please, at Cetacean Observations? Did you really think I wasn't going to give Harry Kim ups? Are you kidding me? Up for the Harry Kim that arrives on the bridge, up for his second pip. Now, I've had to count this up for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 separate Harry Kims, I think, appear in the episode, because after we get into the room with the multiple Harry Kims, it becomes a bit harder to count. So that's the amount of ups I've just added there. Did you really think I wasn't going to? Come on. In the opening scene, they are drinking Ractigino in the mess hall. We talk about transporter clones. Now, we know obviously that William was Boimler's transporter clone from before. We talk about the fact that he stayed on the Titan. The Anaximander is a Defiant class ship. Now, I have notes here on Anaximander, who was a Greek philosopher. He came up with some ideas like the Earth hanging unsupported in the cosmos. He was also one of the first to write down his work. He was a giant of Greek philosophy. And also, that is one heck of a tongue twister of a name. We see the Section 31 comm badge on William Boimler's chest, the Defiance bridge itself with that lovely, lovely carpet. T'Pol speaks of her marriage to Trip Tucker. Curzon Dax is wearing the outfit that Jadzia wore in the episode Blood Oath. Garak is a surgeon, among other things. Bashir, we know, was scanned in to be the long-term medical hologram in the episode Dr. Bashir, I presume. The escape pod they save Harry from is the ones we've seen in DS9 and Voyager. Boimler is ready, is so done at this point. Oh, what are we going to find next? Neelix for the crew cut, really big Spock. Harry Kim as well, the whole gag of this one has a promotion versus all the others that don't. Curzon doing a little bit of batlething on the bridge. Kim being shocked that there's more than just 2 universes. Now, I mentioned these earlier on, but yes, William Boimler is so over the idea of this remixing of ideas. What are we going to get? A reverse Picard, a Borgified Kirk. Now, that's actually a bit of a deep cut reference to the Shatnerverse novels, where it is the Borg and the Romulans are somewhat responsible for bringing Kirk back to life after his death in Generations. Human Worf. Now, this might be tangential, but if we think back to the Voyager episode Faces, where we had both human and fully Klingon versions of B'Elanna Torres. In some dimensions, I'm a Taylor. Hilarious. The Kim room. Now, we broke this down when we did the trailer breakdown as well, but just think, you've got Kim in the Delta Flyer flight suit. One Kim is playing the clarinet. They are all over the moon of the fact that this Kim has just walked in, has a second pip, has actually earned a promotion. They ask if his Voyager made it home or if it just settled in the Delta Quadrant. Bashir says that having done research of his human form, he finds out he was actually quite a good racquetball player. Now we know this because we saw him playing racquetball in the episode Rivals with Chief O'Brien, to which Garak alludes about their competitive nature. Garak then says that there was a Bolian masseuse who worked on the promenade and he would love to bring the hologram Bashir there, which does seem like a strangely insensitive thing to say to a hologram. But however, there's quite a few statements like that throughout the episode actually, like, oh, once you taste the red wine, how? Anywho, a Type 7 shuttlecraft is what Mariner comes through the fissure in, and that beaming of Mariner from the shuttlecraft directly onto the bridge of the Defiant is very like what happens when 7 of 9 is beamed directly onto the bridge of La Sirena in Star Trek Picard. Ensign Mariner, well, first of all, Ensign Mariner, but still wearing yellow. Now, we have seen Mariner wear yellow before, but this one definitely really enjoys engineering a little bit more than the other one, though. Many more references to T'Pol just in general. Boimler talks about how he was created with a transporter clone. This Mariner says, oh, that happened to our Troy, and she was then stranded on a planet for years. He says, that sounds familiar, happened with our Riker. You know what? Taken up for that one. I like that. That's just fun. Kim's asking Lieutenant Kim, you know, did you have your own quarters? Did Janeway let you sit in the big chair? Which was just quite funny. And of course they reference things like Borg infiltrations, aliens trying to steal our organs, the Vidians. Didn't seem like that big of a deal. Really, really like that. Reference to Tuvix. We talk about the fact that T'Pol and Trip were married for 63 years, the Dax symbiont. We get our Trekno babble, which is just, of course, classic for Star Trek. The ring ship, which, as I've said, is clearly a visual reference to the ring ship Enterprise, which was designed around the time of the motion picture, you know, and before. Speaking of the motion picture, as they go through the fissures, we get the wormhole motion picture effect. Garak and Bashir are talking about their respective rises in their different universes. The reference to the Kims being stronger than they look, I think, yeah, Harry Kim took a bit of a beating in the 7 years of Voyager, so I like that they call that out. Curzon references Binox. Mariner saying, Boimler's a big Starfleet nerd, like Archer. And there is, as I said, just a moment of T'Pol remembering Archer was a nice touch. Mariner, just before she's arrested, tries to do the live long and prosper symbol. Curzon is delighted for the fact that these Quappas, at least they don't drink our bones. Oopsie. The Enterprise-era jumpsuits on the crew of the Beagle with the Beagle patch on their arm as well. Lovely to see it. Absolutely lovely to see it. Garak hiding behind a panel seems like a bit of a knowing wink to Garak in our universe is highly claustrophobic. So hiding behind a panel like this is probably not something our Garak would have done. But it's also evocative of characters like Lon Suder, Chakotay, episode DS9 The Siege, where they hide in the Jeffries tubes of the station as well. A hollow emitter is chucked so that Bashir can walk around the ship. Garak saying he's a surgeon, but not just a surgeon. One of the background crew of the Beagle has a lighter blue jumpsuit, which to me is very evocative of Hoshi's uniform in all of Enterprise. Lily Sloan, of course, being a massive Easter egg in and of herself. A lot of name dropping of Zephyr and Cochrane. In her universe, she and Cochrane built the quantum reality drive as opposed to the warp drive. They have their own version of the Prime Directive. You know, they don't make contact with other people who can't quantum jump, for example. Garak's reference to never being one for face-to-face combat, well, in Call to Arms, he shocks Odo by saying he would shoot a man in the back. It's the safest way. The Beagle itself, I mean, you know, count the references. The ring ship, the Beagle, Archer's dog, Porthos, and of course, Beagle, play on the word of the eagle. Nice little visual gag as well. T'Pol and Curzon are using what look like very 50s era ray guns to do the repairs on the Beagle. Well, don't we remember when Lily Sloan held her first phaser and she's so shocked that she didn't realize it was set to vaporize, and she says to Picard, "It's my first ray gun." The Beagle is powered by unobserved complex gluon cores, or UCGC, which to me is very evocative of GNDN conduits that run all throughout all of the original series, and they turned up on Starbase 80 as well. The interior, of course, being very reminiscent of the NX-01. Lily says that Boimler is very like Zephyr and Cochrane when they started working on the quantum reality drive together, that he needed a bit of convincing too, presumably because maybe he had other ideas in her universe, like islands full of money and naked women. Lieutenant Kim says he's taking these beautiful Kims to a reality where they can rank up. The bridge of the Beagle is very reminiscent of the NX-01 bridge. One Kim says to Lieutenant Kim, this is very un-Kim-like behavior, to which he goes, shut up, Harry. The Defiant engineering, which is gorgeous, and Hollow Bashir jumping in to help Mariner there. Curzon says, a damn salamander zapped me. What are we all thinking of immediately with that one? Curzon dying. Now, I've got my own hopes up here. Because of all of these returns that I never thought would happen happened in this week's episode. I don't want to be like, oh, I wonder what we'll get next week as well. Do you reckon they might bring Jadzia back next week? Are we going to see the long-awaited return of Terry Farrell? And now I feel sad that I've said that, because what if it doesn't happen? Sorry everyone if I put that in your heads. T'Pol says that this was more Catra than I anticipated when she mind melts with the Dax symbiont. Harry saying, I'm Harry, f*** him, just sounds right. Lily decides to use soliton waves to shut down the Beagle's engine. Now, soliton waves were introduced back in Force of Nature, that episode of Next Generation, sorry, where they were going to effectively surf through space, and that would be how they would travel with warp. Remember that thing that was valid for like a day and then no one ever mentioned it again? Now, I did want to bring just a little bit of attention to what Lily was talking about outside the Beagle. When she says she's met humans who've built rings around stars, well, first thing that makes me think of is Halo, but then also Ringworld by Larry Niven. And we know that Ringworld by Larry Niven is very connected to Star Trek because it's where we got Kzinti from. And you know how this works. Kzinti gets an up. The other thing she says is that she's met humans with continent-sized ships. Now, I know it's not as big as a continent, but that makes me think of the Enterprise J, for example, which is so big and has that, you know, that folding technology that allows it to be effectively bigger on the inside. And things like the Angelou class from the 32nd century as well. Maybe that's what she was talking about. Maybe it wasn't what she was talking about, but I mean, if you only look at the beautiful renders of the Enterprise J and you see forests and cities inside it, yep. Folks, thank you so much for sticking it out with me, because I know this was a detailed episode. I am exhausted, and I presume you are too, but what an episode. What a gift. What an absolute gift for Trekkies. You know, this plot's thin in this episode, and I don't mean that as a criticism. I mean, it's like, there's the ship, find the ship, chase the ship, okay, cool, boom, now come back next week. But that's not what this was about. This was about Star Trek history coming together. And as the second last ever episode of Lower Decks, I can think of no better gift for this show in particular to give to its audience. So folks, thank you very much. What did you think? Please let us know. Make sure you're letting us know on socials, below the comments below this video. Also Blue Sky, we're on Instagram, we're on TikTok, we're obviously on YouTube, we're on Threads as well, and we are still on Twitter. So yes, do let us know what you think. I hope you enjoyed it. And last episode next week. I don't ever like doing a last episode of anything, but also I'm excited to see where it all goes. So folks, while I go and grab a coffee and catch my breath, I want to say thank you very much to yourselves for watching along with this video. Thanks for poor Chris, who probably broke his heart trying to get this edited. Yous are all awesome. Live long and prosper, and I'll talk to you soon.